Hey guys, welcome to another Kiksta ranking. So today I'm going to be ranking all 8 Harry Potter films, starting from least best to my favorite. Now, this will be only the 8 Harry Potter films, not including the Fantastic Beasts ones. I'm not a fan of those movies and I don't think I would ever rank those movies or review them in any way. But the Harry Potter films, on the other hand, I am a huge fan. They're one of my favorite film franchises and of all films, and the books I love even more. But today I'm just focusing on the movies, not the books. There might be some mention of the books when alluding to what I like and dislike about some of the films, but this is mainly focusing on the films and ranking them from least best, I'm not going to say worst, but least best to best, because I believe all of them are either good to great. So before I get started, I just want to warn you that some of my choices of my rankings in this list might be a bit controversial once you come to hear them and see them. I hope I do my best to explain why I feel this way about them and why I've ranked them in these positions. You might be very surprised at what I have at number 1. Not many people will have this one at number 1, but yeah, let's see. So coming in 8th place is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the 5th entry in the Harry Potter series. This movie, I had a lot of high expectations for it because I really love the book. It's not my favorite book in the series, but it is really good. But I knew going in that this was going to be a struggle to put to screen because it is the biggest book in the book series, and so naturally it's just too much ground to cover. And really what the filmmakers decided to do was just focus in on the one main storyline, which is of Harry building Dumbledore's army. That is the main plot, I guess, of the book, but the book has so many subplots that go along that are so great and have so many cool moments and stories to them, but they really focused in just on the Dumbledore's army aspect of the story and made it all about that. Now, in terms of execution of that particular storyline, I thought it was fine. I thought they did a great job, a good job of just kind of conveying one from the beginning, Harry's struggle of no one believing him about Voldemort being back, to then slowly coming around to his friends rallying around him to help start Dumbledore's army, where he then kind of regains his mojo a bit by training them essentially and like taking on that leadership role that he'd kind of always tried to avoid. He was always just trying to get by in his first 4 years, whereas this time now he was actually kind of thrust into a leadership role, and it's fun to see Harry take on that challenge. Yeah, there's so much missing in the film, and so much of it is rushed, and understandably, but look, you just got to judge it for what it is. And I feel the film is one of the shorter entries in the Harry Potter franchise in terms of runtime. I felt they could have added an extra 20-30 minutes to this movie, and which would have brought it to around 2 hours and 45 minutes. I think that would have helped flesh out a few, even if they just stuck with this main storyline of Dumbledore's army, they could have just fleshed out some more things, particularly just like I feel Ron and Hermione were really sidelined in this movie. It's probably more so than any other of the movies. They didn't really have much to do other than just look at Harry and wait for Harry to do things. They weren't really there, and they could have just given them a bit more to do based on what they do in the books and what they go through. And it's particularly Ron's arc of should have taken on Quidditch. That would have been great to see happening in the 5th one, as opposed to taking place in the 6th movie. And even the end, my least favorite part of this movie is really the end fight in the Department of Mysteries against the Death Eaters. In the book, that is an amazing scene, the way it is written, the way Harry carries his friends, like literally carries at some points, like they're all struggling. Some have passed out, some are in agonizing pain, some are completely out of it, and Harry's the only one who's just getting the by, and he's just willing his way through to keep them alive until the order comes to help out and Dumbledore, etc. Like that scene in the book is amazing, but the film did not do it justice at all. I did not like the setting or the execution of it. The fight between Dumbledore and Voldemort is cool. I thought that's probably the best wizard fight in the whole series. But even then, Dumbledore's entry there is not what it is in the book. It's so much more epic in the book, the way he saves everyone. But that said, that battle is good. And there's some cool themes throughout the movie that really show Harry's internal battle, with obviously his connection to Voldemort and how it's really affecting him and his relationships with his friends around him. But yeah, ultimately the film just leaves a lot wanting, like just not just doesn't deliver the same punch as the other films do, and it's my least favorite of the films. I like it, I still enjoy it, but it's my least favorite, and it's the one that whenever I watch the whole series, it's the one that I just kind of want to get through to just get to the next part of the story. So in seventh place is the sixth film, The Half-Blood Prince, which is obviously the follow-on from The Order of the Phoenix. So this one, I actually think is a pretty well executed film considering the size of the book. I felt out of the four main large books, being the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, obviously the seventh one was split into two films, so that it had that benefit of being able to take its time a bit more. But I felt out of the fourth, fifth, and sixth, it probably did the best job of actually like pacing wise, not rushing, not feeling like everything's being rushed all the time. But that said, I think the pacing was almost a bit too slow at times when not much was happening. You know, this film probably has the least action of all the Harry Potter films, or the least kind of like just cool moments. It was more kind of soap opera, and it kind of dealt more with just the like the kind of emotional side of the teen angst and dating and girls and boys and love life and all that kind of stuff. It more dealt with that thing and the humorous side of that, and I thought it executed that pretty damn well. It's a shame they removed the whole end battle that's meant to be at the end of the sixth one. I think that would have been really cool, but instead they just completely skipped that, which was disappointing. I felt this was finally Michael Gambon's best performance as Dumbledore, after he took on the role from the third one onwards after the passing of Richard Harris, who I think was born to play Dumbledore. You know, Michael Gambon in the third, fourth, and fifth, I felt never did justice to Dumbledore's character, but I felt he really nailed it finally in his final outing, I guess, as Dumbledore. And that was really good. And, you know, the killing Dumbledore scene was really well done too. I just felt it just doesn't quite, it's missing a lot of the things from the book that would have made it better, but again, there was no time for it. And this one has a decently long run time. It's probably, I think it's one of the longest, if not the longest, of the series. But yeah, I think aside from the negatives I mentioned, the other negative I'd say is, you know, obviously they kind of shoehorn in Harry and Ginny's relationship. It's not earned at all. In the books, it's very much earned and explained how Harry's feelings come to be, but in this one, it's just like all of a sudden he sees Ginny in a window at the Burrow, and all of a sudden he's in love with her, or he has feelings for her. It's pretty weak. It's not how it's meant to go, and it just doesn't feel natural. And you can just tell Daniel Radcliffe and what's her name, Bonnie Wright's chemistry is just not there. Even in the following films, in the Deathly Hallows, it's just not as good as it's meant to be. And so that kind of, I felt, let down the film a lot. But otherwise, it's a good solid film. I think it's very well paced throughout, and it's called The Half-Blood Prince, but they kind of forget about that storyline for a good chunk of the film. It's like introduced at the beginning when Harry first discovers the book, but then doesn't really come up again until the very end. Whereas in the book, the question of who is the Half-Blood Prince is like front and center every chapter, but this one they kind of go away from it a bit to look at the other things that are going on. So yeah, that's my second least favorite of the series. Coming in sixth place is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. This film, when I first watched it, I really loved it. I thought it's you know, obviously this is the first part of the two-parter being the Deathly Hallows, but really it's more like the first 2/3. So the reason they had to split the seventh book into two is because the first 2/3 of the book take place over a year, whereas the final third takes place over a night. So you would have all sorts of pacing issues if you tried to make that into one film. So I understood they took the first 2/3 and they made that one movie, and then so they could just have the Battle of Hogwarts be the final one. My biggest compliment of this movie is that it's probably the most faithful adaptation of the books since the second movie. You know, the first two movies I feel are definitely the most faithful to the books, obviously because those books are the smallest, so it's the easiest to be. But yeah, it's definitely it's very faithful. I think the performances are top notch by the actors. I feel like they're really hitting their peak in terms of the acting. They've just gone from level to level throughout the series as they've gotten older, and I feel Harry, Ron, Hermione are all great, and I think that's very important because this film is very much just them. Like, this is the first film that doesn't take place at Hogwarts, so there's no other surrounding supporting cast. There's not many supporting characters. It's just about them and their relationship and how it gets how everything gets difficult for them, and they fight with each other and they clash and they make amends and all this stuff, and it's the most different of all the Harry Potter films because this is a very campy type film that's it's a survival story basically, and like a journey type film where they're just traveling from place to place to try and to find the Horcruxes and destroy them. So it's a very different change of pace from all of the other Harry Potter films, but it was one I really enjoyed, and so that's my main positives to say about it. I'd say, the negatives is that it does get a bit slow at times, kind of like the Half-Blood Prince as well. Similar problems where it's just a bit too slowly paced. And I think the reason for this is because it's focused on the first 2/3 of the Deathly Hallows, which are the more slower paced portion of the book, because they, as I said, they're very camp, like literally camping at times, where they're intense and discussing where they're going to go next and where they're going to travel to next. So, but as that's it. I felt it adapted the book very well, that portion of the book very well, and I really enjoyed it. My fifth favorite in the Harry Potter series is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is the third entry in the Harry Potter series. So this is a slightly controversial one because many people consider this to be the best of the film series, in that it's really well filmed, it's really well acted. You got some big time actors in it, with Gary Oldman obviously coming in, and David Lewis, and obviously Alan Rickman's already there. You have the new Dumbledore, which is Michael Gambon, who, whilst I feel didn't give the best performance as Dumbledore, he was definitely a noteworthy actor at the time. And you just got a lot of great performances all around, great acting, great filming. The way they filmed the movie was very very well done by the director, Alfonso Cuarón. He's got a distinct style about him, and he definitely brought his flavour to the film that kind of just took the film to the next level of maturity, because obviously the first two are much more juvenile, and this one kind of just takes up the next notch. Like, okay, they're entering their teen years now, they're 13, things get a little bit more serious, and it's a good stepping stone. I don't really have any major criticisms of this movie. I think it's a really good movie. I think just the reason it's in fifth place as opposed to higher is because the actual story of The Prisoner of Azkaban is one of my lesser favorites within the series, and I think it's just because it's there's only 2 books out of the 7 that don't have Voldemort, and this is one of them. And I think that's just the reason what holds it back. There's just the stakes don't feel as high, but that's it. I think it's a very good film adaptation of what the book was. It's just I just don't feel the book was that great, in my personal opinion. It's one of my least favorites of the book series. But look, I don't have any direct criticism of the way the film was made. I just can't regard it as one of my favorite within the series, but just because I just don't love the story of The Prisoner of Azkaban that much. My fourth favorite in the Harry Potter franchise is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or the Sorcerer's Stone if you're in America. This movie is great. I love it. Obviously, it's the first in the series. It's what brought me into the franchise. I hadn't read the books before I saw that movie, so that made me love Harry Potter. And everything about it is great. The magic, the sense of wonder and adventure. The music is iconic. Just the actors are great. The young cast are doing an admirable job. Obviously, they brought in a lot of experienced actors too for the older cast who are great. It's just really well filmed. It's directed by Christopher Columbus, who prior to that was probably most well known for Home Alone. And you see a lot of similarities when you watch the Philosopher's Stone now with Home Alone, and the way they film. Very similar themes. Are very, very wholesome, very enjoyable, very family. I love it. I love the movie. I don't have much to criticize about it. I think the only thing I could say is that in terms of when you talk about films aging over time, this one, when I rewatch it, you feel the age, or rather the lack of age, of the main characters, Harry, Ron, Hermione in particular. They do really feel like little kids when you watch this movie now. You get so used to seeing them, because they kind of grew up and their voices broke by the second or third film, so they sounded basically the same from like the second, third films onwards, whereas the first one kind of feels like an outlier. They got these squeaky little voices. It's not a criticism of the film or them, it's just how it is. It just, if I'm going to find anything that's just kind of slightly off-putting about it when I rewatch it. It's just that aspect. But at the same time, I love it. I love it to death. It's so wholesome. It's a great story too. It's a great introduction story to that world and everything about it. The way you get to explore the different classes, the different parts of the castle, the Forbidden Forest, Quidditch, just encapsulates everything from the book so perfectly well. And yeah, it's a great movie. So my third favorite in the Harry Potter franchise is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, the final chapter of the film series. So this movie is basically a straight up war movie or a battle film set in Hogwarts. You know, within 15-20 minutes of the film, they're at Hogwarts and it's just all hell breaks loose, as Harry says. And it just goes from there all the way to the end of the movie. It's just straight out action. It's probably the most action-packed of all the Harry Potter films. They made some strange choice. I'm going to start with some of the negatives of this film. Probably my least favorite part of it is the way they killed off Voldemort, and Bellatrix for that matter. The way that they kind of faded to dust. When I saw that, I was like, kind of couldn't believe it. I'm like, we all waited for this moment for 10 years, particularly to see Voldemort die, how he gets killed, and it's just to go like that. It's just not like the book at all. You know, we all wanted to see that the way it's meant to happen, with Harry confronting him, and kind of it's more of a verbal exchange than an actual physical fight. It's Harry's breaking him down and tearing him apart just with his words before they finally finish him off. That's my main criticism. Otherwise, I think the action is great in the film. Some of it is like spectacular to see. And my personal favorite thing that translated really well from the book to this film is that when you're reading the book and you're reading the Battle of Hogwarts, you feel the tension and the angst, especially within Harry, about, you know, being under the clock. Like every second that goes by is another loved one of his who potentially and does die, you know, during the battle, and you feel the weight of that stress weighing in on Harry. So he has to find these remaining Horcruxes so they can kill Voldemort. And you know, you feel that tension building. Like, God, come on, Harry, get there. You gotta get through to find this thing. Your friends are dying. It felt very you feel the tension. I really love that. And you know, I think the best sequence within the film is from when Harry goes into the Pensieve and sees that memory, which is probably the best, maybe one of the best scenes of the whole film franchise, the way that was filmed, where basically everything is explained that we've all wanted to know all along. And from there through till pretty much when Harry comes back to life in Hagrid's arms, that whole portion of the film I think is perfect. Like, from just Daniel Radcliffe's performance is next level. This is by far his best acting throughout the whole series. His reaction to the Pensieve, saying goodbye to Ron and Hermione, you know, his slow walk down to the Forbidden Forest, and you know, obviously using the Resurrection Stone to see his parents and Sirius and Remus again. It's really touching stuff, and you get to see Harry's bravery, his fear, everything about him that you love is just all culminating in this one moment, and it's just perfectly executed. And I really love that whole portion of the film. And overall, it was a fantastic conclusion to the series. I think anyone who had enjoyed the movies up until that point was definitely not disappointed by that finale. So we're at the top two now. So which one could be the second place? Well, this one takes a lot of thought for me because I love both of these films very much. But ultimately, I settle on coming in second place, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. This movie is, I think, maybe the best adaptation of all films from the book. Like, it, you know, as I said, the first two books are much shorter than the rest of them, and so it's the easiest ones to adapt in terms of capturing the most out of it. But I think on top of that, Chamber of Secrets has one of the best stories of the series in terms of the twists. And you know, in the first film, Harry is welcome to Hogwarts. Everyone loves him there, but he doesn't understand it, why they love him or why they know him. He's just kind of thrust into it. Whereas now it's finally, you're seeing the other side of that, where his fame is actually working against him. People are fearing him. They're suspecting him, especially if he's being accused of, you know, petrifying these students. and you finally get to see the other side of that coin of Harry's of his fame, I guess. But just the twists and turns, and like, you know, the way that the situation becomes increasingly more dire, I think is conveyed really well throughout the film. You know, as each person gets petrified, it just gets more and more serious until obviously Hermione gets petrified, and then it's like, you know, that's the top, you know, the most tense it gets. But the final action in the Chamber of Secrets is great, and the reveal of Tom Marvolo Riddle being Lord Voldemort is fantastically done, and the sequence with the basilisk is awesome and still looks great to this day. And you know, you get to see Harry being a hero throughout the movie, which I really like. He's you know, as a young kid at the time, that meant a lot to me, seeing a young boy also being a hero. But the movie is just really well executed all around. You know, it's Christopher Columbus again who did the first movie too, so you had very similar tones and themes from both films, and I always kind of wonder what it might have been like to have let Christopher Columbus direct all seven, because he is known as being kind of a as for directing like youthful casts and stories about kids and whatnot. So I wonder if he would have been able to kind of increase the tone of the films as they got darker and darker, as they do in the books. But I always kind of wonder if that could have panned out, because at least I think one of the criticisms of the Harry Potter films is that they, with the changing of directors, they do have different tones that kind of, and sometimes even visually things look different to the previous film, which kind of is a bit jarring at times. But you know, definitely his first two films, everything is visually consistent, thematically consistent, everything. So you just can't help but wonder what it might have been like to see him do the whole series. But you know, I love those first two films, and Chamber of Secrets I love even more. Yeah, it's a great film, and it's a great story. Like, so I think it benefits from being based on one of the best stories within the Harry Potter franchise. So we are finally here at number one, and obviously by the process of elimination, you've probably determined which one is my favorite. And it's definitely a controversial one, but it is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So let's get the negatives out of the way first, because there are negatives to this film. It is rushed. Everything in this movie moves at 100 miles an hour in terms of even the actors at times, the characters feel like they are walking faster than normal. Like everything is happening at a sporadic pace. And you know, that obviously is due to the size of the book. Like, this was the first book that made a massive jump in size compared to the first three. You know, the 1, 2, and 3 got gradually a little bit bigger than the next, but then the fourth one was just like a gigantic book. And I remember they were talking at the time about potentially turning this movie into a two-parter. Like, they could have done that, could have been great. I think it just it's not something there was no precedent for that at the time, of dividing films into two, particularly in the middle of a series. Like, that was kind of reserved for the final chapter of a film. So look, they were never going to do it, but in hindsight, maybe if they had done it, maybe I would love this even more. But that said, this is my favorite film, so I've got to defend it and explain why. So just to talk about the book a little bit, one of the themes in this book is really, it's Harry's entering into the phase of his youth where he's starting to see the girls around him, and like having to deal with asking girls to go, like, to be his partner for a ball, and that, and dealing, and at the same time he's dealing with this terrible situation where he's been thrown into this tournament, the Triwizard Tournament, that he did not want to be in, and he's getting all this attention from it, even good and bad. You know, obviously Ron turns against him for a good portion of the book because he feels betrayed and jealous of Harry. But but he's also getting fame and all this attention on all sides, and he just can't deal with it, or he's trying his best to deal with it. But yeah, throughout that, he just really felt that teenage angst, and just that, like, you know, and as a young guy at the time, I was similar age to Harry. Like, when that film came out, I was about 13 too, and so I was starting to feel those same things in real life as well, and so I could really relate. And you know, I think the movie captured that really well, and I think it did it through this one upped the humor for the first time in the franchise. The first three had that like tiny little bits of humor, but this one was the first one to actually deal with real, like, school humor, and you know, students being teenagers and whatnot. And it was really, like, it was genuinely funny at times to see the characters in these situations. And yeah, like aside from that tone of the film that I really enjoyed that it captured, I felt it really also captured the darkness that we were now entering with this film. Like this book and film does really up the stakes in terms of the the darkness that is present within the world of Hogwarts and whatnot. There's a lot at stake there, and obviously the end of it concludes with Voldemort being back, which is now everything is different. Nothing will ever be the same. But like just going through the movie, like the Triwizard Tournament, I think the first task actually is in the movie is actually better than in the book. The book is a pretty simple scene where Harry just flies up and then performs a maneuver called the Wonski feint, where he just does a dive, spiral dive, and takes the egg, and that's it. Whereas they actually turned this into a cool spectacle with the dragon chase through the Hogwarts castle. Oh, that was awesome. I love that. It's one of my favorite scenes in the whole franchise, and I thought it was a great way to just expand upon that scene. Obviously, the second task and the third task, the second being in the lake and the third being in the maze, they were rushed. They could have been a lot better, but I still thought they did well for what they were meant to be. The end fight with Voldemort is, again, it is rushed, but it's still good. I think it's still a good scene, and you still feel the tension, and Ralph Fiennes does a great job, in his first role as Voldemort, and you feel the tension building throughout this film, and then the payoff in that final battle with Voldemort and the death of Cedric Diggory is heart-wrenching, especially seeing his dad's reaction. So it just even though it does feel like a rushed film, and it's flawed. I don't know why, but I love it. It's my favorite of the Harry Potter franchise. I can't explain why. I think it's something more personal to me than anything actually to do with the content or the quality of the film. I think it was just maybe, having read the book just before the film came out and relating to it so well, and then getting to see those particular tones conveyed, or those particular themes conveyed the way I felt them in the book, just meant a lot. And even if it omits a lot from the book, a lot of storylines get omitted from this film that we would have loved to have seen, but still, I love it. I love rewatching this movie. It just brings me a lot of joy. I think because of the humor in the film too, it really is an easy one to watch. Just it's easy to engage with, and you really feel the maturity levels have gone up from this film compared to the previous three. They do feel a lot older, the characters, and they behave as so. And just to me, I just love it, and I probably not the best defense of it for you, but yeah, that's just how I feel. So that's my number one in the series. So anyways, that's my rankings of the 8 Harry Potter films. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a bit controversial, a bit weird, but that's my personal opinions on which ones I like from least best to best. I'd love to hear what you guys think and how you rank them. Please post them in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying my content. And yeah, see you next time. Bye.